super duper great because you probably had a lot less responsibilities of a break than you do when you're in class or taking full-time classes. So, it's been, was it 5 weeks? Close to 6 weeks, wow. All time flies. So here we are again. And there are, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's supposed to be 11 people in this class. That's a good number to me. It's not too many, not too few. I mean, you wouldn't want to be one of like 2 or 3 people in class, probably. And you probably don't want to be, well, and you probably don't want to be one in a class of over 30. Although I don't know if we could fit that many in here, given the spatial restrictions that we have. At any rate, this is Theory 2, and the first thing I need to do, as I do in all my classes on the first day, is distribute the syllabus. So let me get that to you first, and we'll maybe take about 10 minutes to cover some information there, and then we'll move on after that. Maybe I just went a little overboard, but this semester I made my theory syllabi especially super detailed. So there's a lot of pages to this one, and we don't have time to go over everything here. You could certainly read this on your own time. You would probably learn a fair amount about what's going on in this class this semester. A couple things I do want to draw to your attention on the first page. Well, my contact information is at the top. And usually the best way to reach me is through my email address. Unless you physically come to my office, which I'm usually there if I'm not teaching. If my door is open, it's okay to go. You all probably know the same text and workbook that we used last semester is what we're using this semester. It's these green and black 8th edition. So I trust that most all of you have those books. If you don't, you need to get them really soon because we start working in them right away. The course description. I'll just go through the bullet points here because this is unique to this course, not to any other theory course. This semester, we're going to learn how to part-write 7th chords, and we're going to learn some other types of second inversion triads. We're going to learn how to use all the diatonic triads, basically, but even the rare diatonic triads. Like we're going to talk a little bit later how to use, or probably the second unit, how to use like the 3 chord, which is a very rare chord. How to use things like the major 7 chord, which we can get in minor keys. How to use the minor 5 chord, which we almost never see or use. These kinds of things. We're going to talk in the second unit about transposition. We're going to talk about some basics of musical form, such as things like phrases and cadences and periods and small building blocks like that. Then at the end of the semester, and I'm crossing my fingers for this because as long as we don't shut down or have to go through another one of those teaching remotely things due to COVID, the last unit, we're going to start learning some chromatic harmony, that is chords that use pitches outside of the key. And we're going to learn some chromatic chords, which are called secondary chords. And even in that unit, we're going to learn a little bit, just the basics about how a composer changes key in the midst of a piece. Moves from one key to another. And then lastly, we'll be writing some harmonic progressions. In other words, this semester we learned kind of the behaviors of how the chords, the diatonic chords work, how they relate to each other. In other words, how do you know when to use one chord after another, or if it's not a good idea to use this chord after this chord, or use this chord before this chord. In other words, how do you string a succession of chords together to make a nice sounding progression, harmonic progression. we'll learn about that this semester too. So this is a really important semester. Lots of very important information. Obviously, you can't go on to Theory 3 without understanding a lot of this stuff. And that's the whole idea, is to connect you to graduate and get further than we did from Theory 1. Get you a lot more information, and then you'll be prepared for Theory 3 in the fall. That's the idea. The grading in this class is just, well, maybe not exactly. You can see it lined out there. 40% of your grade will be homework assignments and quizzes in class. There are going to be 3 tests plus a final exam in this class. Okay. So three regular unit tests plus a cumulative final at the very end. Comprehensive final exam at the end. That's the plan. And the final exam is scheduled for Wednesday, May 5th. You could put that in your calendars already. That's Cinco de Mayo. And it's going to be from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. But that's a long way away. So, just like in my prior theory class, my Theory 1 class, I dropped your 2 lowest quiz or homework grades at the end, towards the end of the semester. Those, if they're zeros or whatever they are, they won't count against you. So you're allowed to, I mean, you're welcome to miss, although I don't encourage it, you're welcome to miss a couple quizzes or a couple assignments this semester, and it won't detract from your final grade at all, because it'll be dropped at the end of the term. Attendance, similar to last semester. I'm not going to penalize anyone for being gone due to COVID-related reasons. If you are adversely impacted by COVID, in other words, either you have it, or you've been around someone that's had it, or you need to quarantine for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, I will not count you absent in those cases. However, if you are absent because for some reason you overslept a 1 o'clock class, I guess it's possible. But if you overslept a 1 o'clock, he's like, don't look at me, I don't do that. If you oversleep a class, or if for some reason you just decide to go to Hawaii on March 1st because of the heck of it, I don't know, you want to get away from the winter, that's not an excused absence. And so that would count towards a total of absences, which if you reach 7 non-COVID related absences, then you would automatically fail the class. Okay? So that's there kind of as a caution, kind of as a catch-all there. The stuff in the box on the second page of the syllabus is pretty much the same as last semester. Please do read that if you want some detailed information kind of about how assignments and missed assignments and makeup assignments and all that stuff goes. Let's see, what else do I need to say? There is, might be the 4th page that you have, there is what I call a remote instruction addendum to the syllabus. This is just in the unlikely event that the semester shuts down and we have to go back to our homes and finish the semester remotely. Okay. I don't foresee that happening because it didn't happen last semester, but in the terrible event that it would happen, these are the kinds of files that I would be sending to you and you would be sending to me in order to exchange assignments and information and communication and all that, and where we would follow this plan, this format, if we went to a remote instruction rather than what's in the syllabus. But hopefully we'll never have to even pay attention or learn anything on here. We won't have to use it. Otherwise we'll just use everything that's in the syllabus proper. And that'll be our guide as we go through the semester. There's lots of information on the last 2 pages that I just have to include just because administration wants us to include all that and all the instructor syllabi. So that's there for you, of course, to read. And by the way, if you have any questions about anything in the course or the syllabus and you don't see it addressed in the syllabus, just please let me know. Yeah, I'll be happy to try to clarify anything for you. Does anyone have any, I know it's kind of early, but does anyone have any questions about this class or the syllabus or the way things are run? Again, if you've had any before, it's not that much different. Very well, then you can go ahead and hang on to this, put that in your folder or your notebook. And the next thing I'll distribute is the first assignment sheet. Again, a lot of you are veterans now, you kind of know what my assignment sheets are like, how to read them, so we'll just take a minute or two to scan this one. Yep. So if you look at the sheet I just gave you, once again, all of the dates for the classes that we meet this semester are in the left-hand column. All of the approximate topics that I'll be discussing in class are in the next column. And then in the rightmost column is the important information. Those are your assignments. Those are the things that you need to have finished or completed by the beginning of class, on the date that's listed over here. So for instance, there's nothing due today, January 11th, because it's blank over here in the assignment column. But for Wednesday's class, you'll need to have a handout, which is called More Part Writing, or something like, maybe it's Part Writing Review, I don't know what it's called. But anyways, I'll give you the handout at the end of class, and you'll complete that and have it ready to hand in at the beginning, by the beginning of class on Wednesday. Okay? You can see on the week from today, next Monday, we don't have class due to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And when I first started teaching here, they never gave us Martin Luther King Jr. Day off. I think it was only maybe last year, might have been the first day or in the semester where they started canceling classes or not having classes. So this is relatively new for me. And I'm not complaining. Good thing. I'm sure you guys don't mind. So Monday we don't need to be here on the 18th. But after that, there are no more holidays until we get to the first test. And the first test is tentatively scheduled at the bottom. And I'm guessing right around February 12th. If something changes and the date for that test moves, I'll certainly let you know ahead of time. But right now, that's about when it is. And that'll be right at the end of the fifth week of classes. Again, spring semesters are a little funny just because I don't know, none of us knows how to predict the weather. And for instance, you know, if on Monday, January 25th, we have a blizzard or we have over a foot of snow and school is canceled, well, I can't foresee that, and we'll have to make some adjustments to this. But I'll let you know, again, as things happen, as things occur. So let's plan on this for now until something forces a schedule change. By the way, years ago, it used to be that just the way the calendar fell, the first test in this class would always land on Valentine's. February 14th, so this, for some reason, we're just a few days earlier this semester, so I'm glad to say it doesn't land on Valentine's Day. So you won't be getting, at least, I don't know about my other classes, RLC. I don't think you'll be getting a test from me. Let me know if you have any questions about, again, how to read this. Everything in the assignment column that's written in bold is something that you're responsible for, something that I would possibly collect for a grade. Anything listed in the right assignment column that's not in bold is just, and there's only one or two instances of that on this, it's just extra practice work that you can use out of the textbook where you have answers in the back to check your work. So I'll never collect anything that's not printed in bold. It's just listed in there for, because it's on the topic that we talked about that day, and it's extra practice to reinforce your skills in that particular area. So, got that done, and you can hang on to this, obviously, until we get to the first test. Put that over here. All right, so, we're a little bit past 15 minutes. What I'd like to do today, and I guess it does kind of say a little bit on the assignment sheet, I'd like to do some review this class from last semester. I'd also like to review a little bit next class about the non-chord tones that we learned. And we'll hopefully, if there's time, we'll even learn one more new non-chord tone that we haven't talked about yet. But after today and Wednesday's class, then on Friday we're going to start something new. And that's where the new material will start, and that's obviously where the material that could be used on the first test, that's where that will begin. Okay, so I do like to at least have one class period of review, if not more than one, just because even over Christmas break, let alone summer vacation, even over Christmas break, it's easy to forget things if you're not dealing with them and using them on a weekly or daily basis. Okay? So today I'd like to review some of the important part writing principles that I preached to you that have me over and over and over again last semester. We'll do some examples on the board, and we'll get you ready to do the part writing that's on the first assignment. Okay, so I don't think there's anything new today. It's just review. Okay. Let's start by thinking back. Well, I don't want to really ask why do we learn part writing, but I guess I want to ask, what are some of the main goals? What do we strive to achieve, strive to do when we part write? And let me see if I can give you a hint so you know what I'm thinking. Is it okay for us when we part write, that is, take notes from one chord to the next? Is it okay if we just kind of randomly choose, oh, I want this note to go here, I want this note to jump way down here, and I want this one to fill in over here? Is it okay to do that? No.
We want to make it as easy as possible for the voice parts to move.
Okay, that's right. You do want to make it very easy for each of the voice parts to move from one chord to the other. And one of the ways we make it easy for the voice parts to move is we can say that we want to strive for as little motion as possible when you move from one chord to the next. And especially as little motion as possible in the top three voices. Right? The tenor, the alto, and the soprano. The bass is an exception because sometimes basses will leave an octave or fifths quite frequently. And that's okay, but we don't want we don't want tenor singers or alto singers or even soprano singers to really be leaping more than a fourth back and forth as you go from one chord to the next. That's just a little bit too disjunct. It's a little bit too choppy. Okay? So we learned that when moving notes from one chord to another last semester, it's not aesthetically pleasing, nor is it musical to move the notes haphazardly. We can't just randomly say willy-nilly, oh, this chord needs a B flat, let me move this note in this voice all the way down to, it doesn't work that way. So it's important to remember that the chief goals in voice leading, as I said, are to connect the notes of the chords in a smooth and singable way by minimizing the amount of motion in the upper three voices. But at the same time, we do want to try to keep and maintain a little bit of independence among the voices. We don't want, as notes move from one chord to the next, we don't want all the voices doing the exact same thing. That would get monotonous really quick. We want them, because you have four independent voices, they can do their own thing. Not necessarily rhythmic-wise here, but they can have their own shape, their own contour, they can go their own direction. They don't have to follow the direction of another adjacent voice or anything like that. If we have the voices do too much of the same thing, we run into the risk of writing certain intervals that are not allowed in this style of music. What's one particular interval that you should not write any two voices in parallel motion? Okay, parallel octaves, yeah. We're never supposed to have two voices move to different notes that are an octave apart, and then they go to other notes that are also an octave apart, okay? We're never also supposed to have two voices move in what's called parallel fifth motion. Parallel perfect fifths are bad. Parallel octaves are bad. And parallel unisons are bad, because that motion between any pair of voices detracts from melodic independence or from vocal independence. Okay? It just has them do the same thing too much, and it sounds just like too much. You've lost a voice in the texture, the sound of the chord is just too hollow, too open, that kind of thing. So we avoid parallel fifths and parallel octaves. Now, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but basically last semester what we did is we took a lot of class periods and we took a lot of time studying some guidelines and rules that enabled us to connect the notes of one chord to another chord in a musically satisfying or pleasing way. And some of those rules involved the objectionable rules of don't ever write parallel fifths, octaves, or unisons. Can anyone think of another rule that we were supposed to follow that we were not supposed to write? Things we were not supposed to do?
Write the parts outside of their voice ranges.
Yeah, right. We got to keep the voices within their respective ranges. The soprano can't go too high. The tenor can't go too low. Things like that. We don't want to cross voices. There was a whole host of them. In fact, last semester, those of you that had me, I gave you this handout. It was on a yellowish or a colored sheet. And there are 15 part writing rules that must be followed. And these are the 15 rules that we started with. Now, I'm just curious because I know I didn't have everyone here last semester. I have extra copies of this. Is there anyone here that needs or would like a copy of this? 1, 2, 3. Okay, let me know. It's okay if you don't have it from last semester. If you do have it from last semester and you know where it is, that's fine. Bring it next class. But if you don't have it at all or you think you'll never find it, then I would like to give you one of these so you don't forget. Now, unfortunately, this one's not on your yellow paper. It's just on white paper. But hopefully you'll be able to find it. Put it in a safe spot so you don't lose it. Because when I grade your part writing, I try to make sure, look very closely to make sure you have not committed any of these errors. In any part of your part writing is move the notes from one chord to the next chord. Now, in addition to these rules, there was another handout that I gave you to help keep us part writing smoothly and in a musically satisfying way. And that other sheet involved a bunch of doubling rules. Doubling rules. Because we found out that root position chords have one doubling rule, second inversion triads use a different doubling rule, and then there's a whole host of different doubling rules for the various first inversion triad types. Okay? Now, I don't know if any of you still have that doubling handout, but I did bring some extra copies. And these are the doubling rules I want you to follow. These are the doubling rules I adhere to, and these are the doubling rules I will check for when I grade your part writing. So let me know, who needs one of these? There's one here, one there, one there, one there. By the way, we do part writing through all 4 semesters of theory. So if this doesn't really go away, it kind of, we do part writing here and there throughout. So, the more solid you know these things and remember these things, I think the easier it'll be. And part writing maybe won't be such a chore or so difficult. So I do have in my notes that it's really important, it's imperative, it's necessary that you reacquaint and you recall these rules. Not only these rules here, but also the doubling rules, and start getting them back in your mind. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily refer to these handouts all the time. You can, it's just that you won't be able to, like on quizzes and tests. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, because if you adhere to these rules and guidelines, your part writing grades will generally be good. They will be. No other way to say it. All right. I know, I'm just going to go right into it because it's going to take a little time to do this. What I've got is I have a handout with 2 examples on there. The top example is an analysis example that we would analyze chords with Roman numerals, and we would spot and look for any non-chord tones. I'd like to save this top example for Wednesday's class when we review non-chord tones specifically. But the bottom example is one where we have to part write or fill in missing voices. And that's what I'd like to go through here together as a class. And that's what I've started writing up here on the board. So as we go from chord to chord, we can start to recall and remember, oh yes, I remember what we were supposed to do with this chord. Or, oh yes, I remember how we were supposed to do this. So I'm going to give you one of each of these, and we'll work on the bottom example together for a little bit of some time here. See how far we get. Oops. So just the bottom example, that you have it, you'll have it in front of you, and then I'll have it on the board here, and we can work on it together. Basically, the only instructions we have here as part of our part writing review are to part write this progression here. And I've given you the soprano line, so 1 out of 4 voices is already taken care of. And I've also given you all the Roman numerals for the chords I want us to part write, and I've given them to you so that we could know their specific bass positions, whether they're in root position or first inversion or what have you. And I've also given the key here, so we know that we're working in the key of F major. Okay. Now our job is to fill out all the alto, tenor, and bass notes to have this a complete 4-part texture from beginning to end, using obviously our good part writing rules. And again, it's not ideal that the piano is way, way, way over there, but somewhere I'm going to find, I have a copy. Here it is. Let me go ahead and play what we have so far. It's going to sound incomplete, of course, but at least give us a key content. So this is what we have so far. And what is the parentheses around this note? It's a non-chord tone, right? It doesn't fit in the chord. And I heard somebody say it already, but what does PT mean? Does it mean party time? Passing tone, yeah, that's right, of course, yeah. Okay, now, got the soprano. Alto, tenor, or bass. Which voice do you think I'm thinking of is the best voice to get written in next? Okay, somebody votes for the tenor? Bass. Any other votes? Bass. I think it would be wisest to get the bass in next. I always teach, when I teach part writing, it's best to have the outer voices filled in first if you can. That is the soprano voice, bass voice. That way you have a framework. And then you can go back to the beginning and you can kind of work on the alto and the tenor voices simultaneously, but you know not to take the alto voice obviously above the soprano voice because that's your top boundary, and you know not to take the tenor voice anywhere below your bass voice because that's your bottom boundary. Okay? So I like to have kind of a scaffolding or some kind of a framework in, and that is the outside voices first. To me, it's the best way to approach part writing. So, how on earth am I supposed to get the notes in the bass? Where do I get them from? Do I just pull them out of thin air?
The Roman numerals.
Yeah, I get them from the Roman numerals, right? These symbols here, with sometimes they have inversion symbols, these symbols here are going to tell me what inversion the chord is in, and it's going to tell me that I can figure out what note has to be the lowest sounding note of all for all of these chords. And the lowest sounding note is, of course, the bass voice. So for instance, if I look at this first one and I see an F major, I've got a 1/6 chord. That means an F major triad in first inversion, which means the third of the chord, FAC, is on the bottom. And that means the A is the lowest tone, right? Do you see how I get that? Okay. So rather than put the A up here, I know the bass can sing that high. I'm going to give us some space for the tenor to work. I'm gonna put the A all the way down here. I know it's kind of a leap, but again, it's the bass voice, so I'm not too concerned about smoothness per se. Okay, so I know an A has to be in the bass. What note has to be in the bass for a root position 4 chord in F major?
B.
B what?
Flat.
That's right, B flat. Okay? I'll put that there. And the note in the bass for root position 5 has to be in this key. The root of a 5 chord is C, because C is scale degree 5 in an F scale. Okay. The root of a root position 6 chord in F major is going to be D. Is this too easy? A, B, C, D? It just turns out that way. Okay, who can tell me what is the bass note, the lowest note of a 2-6 chord in F major?
C.
Okay, D flat, that's right, yeah. So we're going to go back to the B flat. Now the bass note of 1-6-4, F-A-C with the C on the bottom. And the bass note of a root position 5, we already did, it stays C. And finally, the bass note of a root position 1 is F. And you're welcome to take this F up to this F or down, it doesn't matter, the bass can sing both. I just decided to take it down. That's within the bass's vocal range. Okay, so now it seems like it's about 50% done, right? We've got the most important voices, the structural voices, soprano and bass, we've got them fixed. Now what I would do is I would go back and I would start filling in the alto and the tenor voices for all these chords based on the rule, 15 rules that I gave you, and based on the doubling guidelines that I gave you. All right. So, if I were to fill in the alto and tenor voices for this 1-6 chord, I know it's F-A-C. I know from last semester that a tonic chord in first inversion, 1-6, I know that I should not double the bass note. I should try to avoid, that's what I teach in first semester theory. You want to try to avoid doubling the bass note of a 1-6. Okay? So that means I don't want another A anywhere in this chord. One A in the bass is enough, it's plenty. That means I need to fill in the top voices with F's or C's. Okay? Now, let's see where I'm coming from. Let's do the alto voice. Do I have to move the alto voice at all? No, because it's already on an F. And remember, one of the main goals of part writing is the upper 3 voices. If you don't have to move something, then don't move it. It's simplest and easiest and smoothest. It's easiest to sing F here and F here. And then take a look at the note that we're coming from in the tenor voice. It's on a C. Do I need to move it to a different pitch as I go to the next chord? No, because I'm looking for F's and C's. And I can double the F or the C. It doesn't matter as long as I don't double the A. Okay. Going to the next chord, root position 4. I know in all root position chords except one, but all root position chords except one require me to double the bass note. Whatever note is in the bass, that one I want 2 instances of. So this 4 chord, I have a B flat in the bass. That means I want, and I have a D in the soprano. I want another B flat, either in the alto or the tenor. Based on where I'm coming from, the alto's on an F, the tenor's on a C. Which one is closer to a B flat? The tenor. So I'm going to move the tenor to the B flat, because I want 2 B flats total in this chord. And what's the other chord tone I'm missing? B flat, D, and
G.
Ooh, not G.
F.
F, that's right. B flat, D, F. Okay. Do I have to move this F? No, it's right there for me. And see, now I've ensured I've got all the notes, B flat, D, and F. And I've got the B flat, the bass note double, which is the recipe and the rule for root position chords. That's the doubling rule. All right? Now, the next one is a root position chord also. So we do want the bass to be doubled. Now, if you're not paying attention, you may be tempted to do something like this, which I would not recommend. What I just wrote there is so ugly I can't even look at it. My eyes are, it's like so offensive. What have I just written?
3 C's.
Okay, I've got 3 C's in the chord, first of all. I don't need 3. What else is wrong with that? Okay, I've got parallel octaves between the bass and the tenor, which is always a no-no, and parallel fifths between the bass or the tenor and the alto, which is a definite no-no. So I can't do that. I mean, it's tempting. You might say, well, I just need to get these notes. Why can't I just put them where I want? No, it's not quite that easy. It's more of an artistic craft that we need to learn. Okay? And I don't know if you recall this, a lot of you that had me last semester, but one day we learned that when you have 2 root position chords whose roots are a second apart, you're supposed to move all 3 upper voices in contrary motion to the bass. I know that's asking a lot. It's like remembering finding a needle in a haystack. But that's one thing we talked about. So if the bass is going up, and they're both root position chords whose roots are a second apart, that means the top 3 voices need to go down to the nearest chord tone to fill in the notes I need for this. And notice my soprano is going down. Good. So I'm looking for the note C, E, G. I'm coming from an F in the alto. What's the nearest note, C, E, or G, below the alto's F? An E. And what's the nearest note, C, E, or G, below the tenor's B flat? G. Right? Now I have all the notes I need, but I don't have parallel fifths at all. Okay. Now, as I go into the next measure, again, if you're not on your toes, you might be thinking, oh, a root position 6 chord, I'm supposed to double the bass, right? Well, normally, yes. But this is an exception that we learned last semester. When a 6 chord comes immediately after a 5 chord, we call that progression, that movement, deceptive motion. Because 5 is not going to the expected 1. It's going to something else. In this case, it's going to 6. But when we have 5 moving to 6, that deceptive motion, there is an exception to the normal doubling rule that we normally have for the 6 chord. Does anyone remember what that exception is?
Double the third, right?
That's right. You do not double the bass of the 6 chord. You double the third of the 6 chord. And this chord is going to be a D, F, A. All right? D, F, A. Which one of those notes is the third? F. So what I want is I want 1 D, I want 1 A, but I want 2 Fs in this chord. And the best way to get that, when 5 goes to 6, 2 voices will move up, 2 voices move down. I hope you can see that if you want to put an A in the tenor, it's not a good idea. If you put an A there, you're going to have parallel fifths. So this one needs to come down. In fact, let me take a step back and look at this. You can see this better than I can. You're further away. I've got 1 D and I've got 1 A. What do I have left to put in? 2 Fs. Okay. So there's an F and there's an F. And you don't have any part right here. You see how 2 voices ended up going up, the bass and the alto in this case, and 2 voices went down, the soprano and the tenor. Is it okay for the alto and the tenor to be this far apart? How far is that?
An octave.
It's an octave. That's the maximum distance the tenor can be away from the alto pitch. And the alto can never be more than an octave away from the soprano pitch at all times. These are on those rule sheets, if you want to look at those again. Okay? We're almost there. This one was a tricky one. What's the doubling rule for a 2/6? There was actually two things you could do correctly. There was a preferred doubling rule, and then there was a plan B doubling rule if that preferred one didn't work. The preferred doubling rule is double the bass if you can in a 2/6 chord. In this case, that would be doubling the B flat. But my tenor's on an F, and my alto's on an F. Is a B flat anywhere near these Fs? Not really. They'd have to, some of them would have to jump a fourth or a fifth to get to a B flat. So I'm not gonna use the preferred doubling rule, that is to double the bass. The secondary, or the plan B doubling rule, is you can double the root of the chord of a 2/6 if it smooths out the voice lead. And in this case, that is going to be exactly what happens. Because the root of a 2 chord in F major is G, right? Do you see how this is a lot closer to a G than a B flat? Yes?
If on like a quiz or an exam, if we did move that F up to a B, would you count for that?
I might take off a half point to a point for just an unnecessary large leap, something there. What pitch am I missing in this D chord? D. Okay, so I guess the alto will have to come down to the D. Is it okay for the alto to leap a third? Oh yeah. Leaps of thirds are smooth, they're very small. No problem. It's not a big jump at all. All right, now I hope somebody remembers this. What do we double in all second inversion triads? No exception. The bass. You double the bass note. And there's never an exception. Okay? So we've got to find a way to get two C's in this chord. Okay? I don't think I'm going to get a C from the tenor. The tenor's sitting on a G. That's too far away. What voice is good to get a C from?
Alto.
Yeah, the alto. Yeah, I have to have the bass doubled in second inversion triads. And again, don't forget the obvious, and that is, what are the notes of this chord, F, A, C? Which note am I missing? I've got an F. Which one? The A, that's right. I'm missing an A, so I can get an A right there. Okay, now, this is a great example because it covers so many things I talked about last semester. There is a specific way, a definite way to part write 164 to 5, reposition 5 correctly. I mentioned last semester several times that these two chords should have the same bass note, which they do. And these two chords should have that same bass note doubled. So, I want to double the bass of this chord, and I want to double the bass of this chord. And the bass is C in both cases. So I'm going to just leave the two C's, the C's that I had doubled. I'm going to leave them, make them static or stationary, that is, you don't move them at all. And then, how do the other two voices, the A and the F, how are they supposed to move to fill in the notes of the 5 chord? They'll always move down by step. That's right. See how this one goes down by step? This one goes down by step too. And you got the notes you need. So that's how you part write 164 to root position 5, which is a very common progression. We'll find out later this semester. All right, and last but not least, we have two root position chords whose roots are a fifth apart. I don't expect you to remember, these were just guidelines. There were 3 ways you could do this correctly. Does anyone remember how many tones are in common between two chords whose roots are a fourth or fifth apart? there's always gonna be one pitch in common. For instance, this is CEG, this is FAC. The common tone is a C. And one of the ways you can part rate this motion correctly is just keep the common tone static or stationary, and you move the remaining two voices by step in the same direction. So if this one goes up, then this one goes up. And again, that's just a guideline. I don't expect you to remember that. What I do want you to know is that, hey, you need to have two Fs in this chord, because it's a root position one, and you double the bass. So this is probably one of the smoothest ways to get that. Okay, given that I've given you an F already in the soprano, so you need to just fill in an A and a C. All right, now we got to finally listen to what we wrote here. Hopefully it sounds good. It should be very singable. You could pick any vocal line that's in your vocal range, and I bet you could sing it no problem. So altogether we have this. As I just look at the top three voices, yeah, I think there's maybe, is there one skip in the alto line total? And it's just a little one? Is there one skip in the tenor voice and it's just a small one? How many skips are in the top voice? Just maybe one right at the beginning? Yeah, you don't really have to. You don't have to jerk the notes and throw them way up high or way down low and have them leap so far. You don't have to do that. There are better, smoother, easier ways to get it done. Does anyone have any questions now about this review of part writing? I don't expect you to have all the rules and the doubling things memorized. That's why you have those sheets. Refer to them as needed, because they will help you. They'll help you get good part writing, get good grades, good answers. So, to leave you then with, I'm going to give you just the one handout. It's only on the front side. It's all got to do with part writing. Follow the instructions and you should have no trouble. So, this will be due next class Wednesday. All right, well, I hope you have a good rest of your first day. I will see probably some of you tomorrow for oral skills, but if I don't, see you on Wednesday.